Hello there, it's Zoe here, and I decided as I was writing the instructions for exercise 10 in the colouring ebook, I felt I needed to explain it even further. So I've decided to create a video to go along with it, and I hope that it will help you through the exercise and give you lots of pointers to take on to your other characters in the future. So this is the finished result, and I did find that because I was stopping and starting, I had more trouble blending, and so that also is a good excuse for me to show you some different examples. Like this was one that I had done earlier. And you can see that when I was able to switch through all the different colors, it was a lot easier to get those soft blends. And that's something that I really want to focus on and help you with when you're coloring skin, is how to get those really nice soft blends and keep everything nice and round without any hard edges. So first off, I wanted to bring in an example of having her blown up, and we're going to go through and practice keeping all of your lines nice and soft. Now this is what I don't want you to end up with. See how I've got this really hard line on her shoulder here. On that side I've softened this side, but I haven't softened this side of the shoulder. And then the same, let me just get a marker so that's easier to point to. And so here you can see this is a hard line, and on this side here where her collarbone is, it's a really hard line as well. And if you have a look at yourself in the mirror, you're not going to have any of these types of hard lines. Everything is going to have a soft curve to it. So I'm going to try and help you work with that today in this video. So let's, using our enlarged version, and you should have that in your printables area, let's work on adding the detail to her collarbone and around her shoulder and keep it really nice and soft and smooth. So starting with your E01, which is the middle shade, we're going to come up, see where the artist has drawn this V here? We're going to come up one side of it, and we're going to come up this side, just like so, leaving a white gap, and then we're going to also fill in this little corner here, and then come across the top of the collarbone, leaving a gap on this side as well. And this is what helps to separate that ligament between the collarbone and the top of the neck. So we're going to also, where this join here of the top of the shoulder, let's make that round, bring that down, and we're going to create a line underneath the collarbone and sort of create our V shape just in here. And this is sort of helps to define the shape of the breast, and it helps to define the roundness of that shoulder bone. Let's do the same on this side. Just bring a little bit of colour down, and then we'll create our pretend V over here. Now what you can also do from this point is bring some shading up, and you can actually sort of join this whole thing across, sort of creating a V in the middle, like so. Now, one other thing is just a tiny, tiny, tiny amount on this other side, because it's sort of got like a muscle happening here, but she is not carrying anything, so we don't want to make that muscle stand out too much, but we just want to create a little bit of depth in the roundness of that shoulder. And I'm going to put in a little bit of a crease there and something under here. All right, so we have the main areas that will begin to add depth and build up the shape of her upper chest. So coming in with E13, I just want to use a very, very small amount. So just at this little point here, one little dot, a little dot between her breasts here, little dot underneath her arms, and that maybe just a little tiny bit here. But we don't need to make a really big deal out of it. With your darker colours, you don't have to put it in every single spot that is going to have some shading. You just want to define certain areas that you really want to push back. So with my E11, it's now time to soften that and blend it out. And my markers are really playing up today. It's so dry here at the moment, and just having their caps off, they're just so sticky. I've cleaned them and done everything. So, but if this happens to you, just carry on. You were just trying to get the best we can. You just wipe it off and try and get that stickiness off. So I'm just adding some depth to these shots. Now when we go down to a smaller image, you only put dots. So, but because we're working with a bigger image, we can add a little bit more ink at the moment. All right. So now we're going to do most of the work with the E01. So we're going to try and soften this section here. Now I was going over and over it so that I can blend out that mess of the ink that was left there from the last marker that was causing me issues. Now this is where you get the mistake of having a hard line. If I'm just blending on this side, trying to blend this side of the line out, I end up with this hard line on this side. So we want to blend both sides so we get nice and smooth transition there. I've still got that little bit of depth, but I've got the nice smooth transition, and then the same here. So I'm going to bring my roundness up. You see how I'm even following the shape of the round shoulder that I want to create? As I colour, instead of just going up, 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 up like that, I'm actually making my marker go round. And then the same as I come down the arm, I'm following the shape of the arm so that all of my my strokes are the same direction and they blend together smoothly. So I'm just going to soften this little area in the middle here. And then the same on this side. Now see how I'm starting to get that sharp line for that collarbone? So we want to try and stop that from happening by, let me just turn so that you can see. If I just come over the top, still leaving a bit of my highlight there, I can soften that edge. So I've still got my highlight, I've still got my darkness, but I've softened that edge so that she doesn't look like she is just made of bone. Okay, let's come back with our lightest colour now, and we're just going to go over those highlights and we can see if we need to add any more depth. It really is a case of coming backwards and forth with your different shades by not adding too much at a time, and you can work out where you need to add more shading. I tend to add my lightest colour, and whilst it's wet, I like to flick my main colour in so I get a gradient and a nice smooth transition. And I am still sort of going round as I flick. And let's help get her. Now I feel like I lost a little bit too much shading. It's quite good, but I want to be really careful that I don't go too dark. So I'm going to use tip to tip. And to do that, I've got my E11 and I've got my E01, and I'm just going to take a tiny bit of ink, and you see how that has transferred to the other nib. And I'm just going to add it into some of these little darker areas like so. And the same as I just want a little bit more definition without it getting too dark on me. Now I've got a little bit of definition there. I'm going to quickly wipe the rest of that off, and then I'm just going to lightly soften it. See how I'm just lightly flicking just to get that ink soft and spread to where I want it to be. Just like that. See, and I think that's pretty good now. If I keep on going, I'm just going to spoil it. So let's take that and put it onto the little image. So I'm going to immediately jump to the E11 because we're working in a smaller area. I'm going to, now you can come in with your E01, so you can do whatever you feel comfortable doing, but I'm just going to start with my E11. I'm going to come up between the breasts, I'm going to come down under the arm. I'm just going to turn it so that I like to have the nib facing the line so that rather than trying to colour over the line, I like to have it facing the line so that I can see where that nib is, or the point. This makes it easier for me. So then I've got this point where the shoulder joins. I'm going to come in and add just a little bit like so. Being careful not to add too much. A little line under here, a little line under here, like so, and then just a tiny little dot there, and I don't want to make too big of a deal out of it. And the crease of her arm here, and that will do for the moment. So let's work on that. So I've got the E11, that was the E11. Let's soften that with the E01. Now remember, we want to soften both sides of that line around the shoulder. So let's take that up and we'll make this roundness of the shoulder. I'm going to soften in that little bend there, and then come in and soften up the neck, taking that through, and then we're going to soften that. You see how quick that can be done? We're just slowly, I'm quick to slow, hello. So yeah, so let's make our little V in the middle here. And see how I've got that point? I want to make sure that that's round. Don't want it to be a point. There we go. Just lots of little flicks. You just want to get the ink on and allow it to smooth itself. Now I've still got that really hard line across there, but to begin with, I'm just going to come in with my E13. I just want to just darken a few of these little areas. So let's add that just in this little spot here, just under her arm here, in the join, and in between her breasts, but nowhere else. Otherwise it's going to get too dark. And using the E01 again, we're just going to soften that, just like so. Ta-da! Okay, I'm going to come in with the lightest shade. We're going to soften, well, we're just colouring the white areas, and then we're going to use the E01 to blend it out. So it's just putting the ink down in those white areas. I don't want to go over the dark too much. And then we're going to use the E01 to build up that form, the softness, and making it all come together. See how I've gone both ways there? So I've got my round shoulder, and then I've got the muscle in my arm that I don't want to make too big of a deal out, but it is there. I'm just going to soften this neck. And then I really want to make sure that this collarbone is soft and round and not too pointy. And that is what really helps to make it look realistic. Here we go, and then I'm just going to soften that line again with the lightest colour. Nice. And she's not too dark, and you can see that she's got some definition without it getting too dark. All right, awesome. Let's just quickly colour the rest of her arm. I'm just going to come in with E11 and come into the little crease here. And with her elbow here, we're just going to add a little bit of colour without going into that point, just above that point. Like so. And then with her hand here, we're going to have a little bit of a round sort of bump there, but we're also going to take that all the way through because it's bent over. It's going to create a crease where the palm of her hand is there. So then on this side, we're just going to come in, come down the bottom here. Nothing too fancy. Just add a tiny bit of colour, and if you can't add to this tiny little areas, just use that tip to tip technique that I was sharing with you earlier, and you just use the one marker and just pick up the darker shades with your tip to tip. Okay, so now I've just switched to the E01 and see how I'm actually following that direction and see how quickly and easily that was to keep that line smooth. It's all been smoothed out now. I'm just going to colour in this little area. I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to just blend that up towards her body, like so. And then I'm following that blend, that marker. I'm going to take that all the way up, soften that in there. And then I'm even softening the other side. Like so. Come in now with the lightest shade. I'm just going to fill in that area. Same as on this side. I'm just letting the ink do the work for me. And essentially, that's all we need to do for her arms. They're really quite simple. Okay, so I am now going to put her aside for a moment, and we'll bring this larger image back. Now remember, I showed you earlier how I don't want you to have really hard lines. What we want to create is we do want to create the muscles that form her body. And so you can see here, this is her waistline. And I don't know what all the different muscles are, but you know, you've got your outside muscle and you've got these things, and you've got your tummy and all that sort of stuff. I'm not giving her like full-on abs. We're just giving her a nice and trim look for the beach. So, and this is, you can see here, I've got these hard lines here and this hard line here, which is, unless she's like a full-on bodybuilder and is in the perfect lighting that's going to do this, it's definitely overboard. So you can see here, we've just got the nice smooth finish of all of these different muscles. So let's show you how to achieve that on this large one, and then we'll transfer it to the small one. So I'm going to come in with my E11. Now something to think of, the way that she's standing, you don't want to bring your line straight down. You want to sort of curve it towards her belly button. So we're going to sort of curve it this way, like so, and we're going to curve up from her belly button so that we've sort of like, we're trying to create this curve of the shape of her rib cage. So that was with E11. Now I'm going to come in with my E01, and we're going to soften the left-hand side of this area here, and then go straight over the top of this one. And now it's time to form the sort of the shape. So look at this point here. So you've got, if you imagine that this is sort of like the side of her, you want to sort of come down from this point and then come in sort of, I don't know, like you're going to create a V on the outside here. So coming around sort of like that. I'm going to do the same here. So we're going to imagine that her rib cage is coming down here, and then we're going to sort of bring it in at a point and then take it out. And it is important to have this little V here because that helps to define where her tummy and her waistline is. So we're going to bring the tummy around like so. And you know, at this stage, it doesn't matter sort of exactly where you've got all this, because we're going to build that up with shading. That's why you do it with a lighter colour to begin with. And so I'm just bringing this down because this is going to be a little bit shading, and of course I've got my rim light there to help define that roundness. So next, let's come back with the E11, and mine is definitely really dry, so please, I'm constantly wiping it off over here. So I'm going to come straight down the outside here. I'm going to come up around the bottom of her tummy. I'm going to add a little bit sort of like in here, and then I'm going to come down this side. I don't want to add too much here because I sort of want that to be light, where the light is still sort of catching it, so I don't want it to be too dark. So what we want to do is go up. So we're going to go to the left hand side of this shading here. We're going to bring the shading across and smooth out that line, and on the left hand side of this one as well, but sort of more down the center. So I'm going to be essentially bringing it up. Yeah, my marker is so gooey on that side. All right. And then I'm going to come down here. See how I've still got a little bit of depth, but I've smoothed it all out. I'm going to do the same with her tummy. Now I'm going to just sort of soften the underside of her tummy by flicking up. And I want to be careful I don't end up with a line here, so I'm just going to soften the left hand side of that as well. And then I'm going to be bringing that up. A little bit of light's going to catch there. So you really are, in this exercise, you really are relying on the whole concept of every layer of ink is going to create extra depth. So I'm just going to soften this just a tiny bit as well. And I'm going to bring a little bit down this way. All right, so let's come in with our lightest shade. I'm going to go over all these white areas. I'm not trying to blend it, I'm just letting the ink do it. I'm just essentially going over those white areas, and then I'm going to be using my medium skin tone to make the transition nice and smooth. So using my medium to flick in, and as it dries it will help to make it really nice and smooth. But it will be lighter than what I've already got there. So see how I'm just sort of working it, flick, flick, flick. Now if you feel like you've lost some of your depth, this is where you would come back with your tip to tip and don't actually put your main colour down. So I feel like I need a little bit more of a V in here. So I'm just going to add, I've taken a little bit of the darker shade and I'm just adding it a little bit like that. See, I really needed that depth there. I've lost it. I'm going to take a little bit more because I've run out. Put it down. And this is a soft way of doing it without getting, I'm just taking that off so I can take a little bit more. And this is a soft way of adding a darker shade without it getting too sticky and too dark on your page. So don't be afraid to do the tip to tip and try it out. It's definitely a good option to get this extra depth. Look at that. Doesn't that look much better? So now I've actually just wiped all that off. I'm just going to soften that where I've blended it. And I'm really essentially quite happy with that. I just feel like I feel like I've got this hard line here. I want to keep that highlight, but it's too hard of a line. So I'm just using my lightest shade here to sort of push that darker ink and soften it. Yeah, there we go. All right, there you go. She looks nice and fit, ready for the beach. She's looking pretty hot. Wish I looked hot. So yeah, one day I hope to look like that. So let's take this and put it onto the little tiny image, because obviously, you know, not many of us are going to be working on such large images, and we need to be able to translate it onto these smaller images. So I'm going to come in with my E01. I'm essentially going to go exactly the same way. We're going to start by adding our little tiny crease, and then coming up this way, we're going to come down. Imagine where that waistline is. Create our little V. Make her tummy. We're going to imagine where her rib cage is going to be. We're going to bring that down. So you come straight down and then you do your little V. And we're going to come down the outside. Trying our best to leave a highlight along the outside. We can essentially even just take this right through, you know. That would work. Okay, so let's come in with our E11. I'm just wiping mine off, hoping it doesn't get all gunky on me. I'm just going to add a little bit of depth. Yeah, it's gunky straight away. How annoying. Coming up. Coming in here. Down the side. So the annoying thing with the gunkiness is that it just means I need to do more work to try and fix it. So it's a bit annoying, but hey, it's part of doing these videos is you get to see the good with the bad. So now I'm just following those lines so that I can soften it. I'm starting by softening on this left hand side because that is where my main shading is that I want to build up. Again here. I'm softening, soften, 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 trying to get rid of that gunkiness. I'm going to soften this side of the line as well. actually going to do some tip to tip because my marker's just too gunky, so this is a perfect reason to use your tip to tip. So again, I'm just coming in, taking a little bit of ink, and you can see how it's changed the colour, and I'm going to carefully apply that and get that extra depth that I need without the gunkiness. If you find that you are getting too gunky as well, then try doing this. Cheeky markers. Always have to play up when I'm trying to show you guys how to do something. It's always the way. Alright, I'm happier with that. So let's get rid of that. And now we're going to just soften those edges again. Yeah, that's looking nice. Nice and smooth. Okay, I'm going to come in with the lightest shade. And just go over those highlight areas. Okay, and now using the E01, we're going to soften all of that. Whilst it's wet, it's always good to just quickly switch through your colours so that you get a nice, soft blend. And you always just press it really lightly. You can see just how lightly I'm flicking. There we go. So now we have softened and formed a sort of shape of her abs there. I'm essentially reasonably happy with that. I think that's not too bad. She's got, I think they're called obliques. I'm pretending that I know what I'm talking about. And so yeah, so there's a little tiny muscle sort of here, and that's why it gets that tiny little bit of a highlight. Okay. And if you felt like you've lost too much again, I'm just actually going to make sure I put the nib on the right one. I just want her belly button to be a little bit darker, so I'm going to just add a little bit of E13 just in here. I like that better. And just a little bit up here as well. I'll use the E01 to blend it out. There we go. That makes more sense. Look at that. Sexy. Yay. Okay, let's move on to her legs. I'm going to start with E01, and what you want to do is you want to have some shading on both sides of her inner thigh, and this is going to be sort of like the darkest area, so it receives obviously the less light. And we're imagining that this sort of leg is connecting up here. So I'm going to lay down some shading there. Now with this leg here, she's got it on an angle. So, and obviously it is bent. So she's going to have a crease here. So we're going to add a little crease there. And then there'll be some shading behind her knee here. And the actual muscle, the way that it connects, sort of around here. And we're going to sort of take that up and then come back here, and it sort of creates that whole big knee structure in the corner of her leg here. don't go overboard with this, but I'm just trying to explain it a little bit from my research and help you sort of see how that's going to create that joint there. Now over here, we're going to come down the side here just to help form the shape of the roundness of her leg. And this one is actually slightly turned as well. It's not going to be perfectly front on knee. So we want to sort of have the highlight over to the left rather than sort of centered. So we're going to bring in sort of like the side of her knee sort of over that way. We'll bring this down. And we've also got like the shin bone here. So we can see that there's like a little bit of a curve suggested here. So let's sort of like create that sort of shin bone. Now you just need to be careful when you're creating this shin bone, just like I was showing you up here, you want to make sure that you're going to end up with a roundness here. We want a little bit of depth, but that still needs to be a round highlight. So now let's add the top of that knee, just like so. And if you don't get these finer details, don't worry about it. It's just, we're just trying to build it up, and once it all gets softened and everything, you don't need to have such detail. Over on this side, we're going to make sure that we keep this leg rounded. So we're just going to bring some colour that way, and then we're going to come up here and just sort of join this like so. There's no sort of muscle structure that gets really shown in this area, so that's all really going to be one colour. But let's just start with that section there, and we'll work down to your little ankles later. Okay, E11, which hates me today. Hopefully you will not cause me any trouble on the legs. Okay, let's come in at a little bit of depth. Yes, you are straight away causing me trouble. Cheeky, cheeky E11, cheeky, cheeky. Okay. See how I've just sort of put dots where I really want to work it? Just enough to get the colour there, and then I will use my E01 to sort of spread it about. And that's why I could have done the tip to tip at this point, and I probably should have, but if your marker is not sticky, you should be able to do what I'm doing without any problems. And if your marker is sticky, you can see that if you are soft and you just put the ink down, you can still do it this way. So you can see that it's just a matter of being patient and flicking. So see how I've started to build, and again, did you notice how I was going around the knee, doing my strokes around that knee rather than trying to flick up into it? And that gives you that nice smooth finish. Okay, let's do this leg. So I'm flicking along those strokes, getting a smooth transition. And again, let's bring this down. The same here. And I'm also going to start filling in the area of that the knee. All right. I am a little bit disappointed in losing a lot of my shading then, so I'm going to come back and do some tip. Whoops. Oh. Okay, I'm actually going to do some E13 straight into this area here because it can be really dark. The same on this side. And that's the only place I'm putting E13. Now I'm going to do some tip to tip tip. I'm using my E11 as my darker shade. I'm coming in with my E01 and let's smooth this out. Just going to turn it for a second. Please excuse me, I just want to get rid of this goobly goo. See how I'm having to work that because it's actually destroyed the paper now. Now, if that ever happens to you, you can just come in with pencils later and we will do that. I didn't do that in the book, but that's the bonus of me doing a video after writing the book. So I'm going to grab some more off my marker. So I'm still dark. I feel like I didn't grab it on the tip. I'm just grabbing, I really want to use a tip, some fine detail. So I'm just adding that depth back in here. I want it to come up here. Okay, picking up more ink, fixing up the knee on this side. Getting my depth back in the thigh. Oh, it's so dry. Like it's really affecting my markers, making this really difficult. Okay. Just going to wipe that remaining off and I'm going to start please forgive me guys, this really is causing havoc, this weather. Okay, I'm going to come in with my E00 and just soften this highlight area. I'm going to do one leg at a time. I'm going to come in with my E01 over the top. Try and get a nice smooth blend. I'm going to pick up a little bit of my E11. Feel like I just keep losing my depth because I'm trying to get everything nice and smooth and my markers aren't behaving. Okay. On the other side, let's add highlight. Coming in with my E01. Okay, still feel like I have just totally lost this knee here. I'm going to add it directly too and see if that's going to help. Just a little bit. The same as here, just a tiny dot. And I'm going to just soften that. That's a bit better. So you can see how you sort of just end up working and working and working it. There we go, it's all right. That's not too bad. Just want to make sure that that is a soft blend there. Okay, let's do her ankles before I totally destroy her knees. All right. So we've got a tiny little bump on the inside. So if you imagine that this is her sort of her heel coming through here, it's going to have where you can see this part of her leg getting smaller. It's going to be just a tiny, tiny little bump. And if you just create a little circle, that will help you sort of build up that inside of her ankle there. And then we're going to just bring that down her foot. Then on this side, it's a slightly bigger bump. So we're going to just do, again, where this part of her leg starts to get narrower. Let's just add sort of like a circle like that. It's not going to end up being that big, but we're just going to start with that. And we'll just flick that back up into the rest of her leg, like so. And now with your E11, tiny, tiny, tiny bit underneath and up the side of her leg here, like so. We can put a little bit along the toes, then a tiny little bit under there, and that can actually add depth right along the bottom of her heel there. Now let's soften that with the E01, just like so. And we're going to soften that top side of the ankle as well, so we get it nice and soft transition rather than a hard edge. Then we'll do the same on this one. Softening and blending out that ink, and then a tiny little bit to soften that edge. Okay, it's come in with the lightest shade. Go over that highlight. Now this is going to take some practice, so I would suggest that you print her out multiple times. She's available as an image on her own, so that you can resize her and you can put her on one piece of paper multiple times and try this technique as often or as many times as needed. So like I did like 6 or 7 times to try and get it to a point where I could try and explain it and sort of try and do it without fail, except, you know, I didn't take into account that my markers were going to go bonkers. So I just feel like I've lost that ankle. So let's do that again. But yeah, so just don't think that you might not get it the first time, so don't give up. Just try again, print her out again, but I would suggest printing her out multiple times before you even begin. And then you can practice a little different areas and try even printing her out at different sizes, just like with the sample sizes of these big ones, so that you can work on the bigger areas, and then you can work on, once you've got the shapes and the ideas, you can work on these smaller images and transfer it. I do need to go and get some pencils so that I can show you how to fix up the skin. There we go, that'll do. I am going overboard. Okay, so where I've got this little bit of a stickiness, I've got, what have I got here? I've got burnt sienna, which is a brown. And I'm just going to come in and sort of just come in and soften that a little bit. We can add a little bit of depth to some areas too with our pencil. Maybe be able to fix up this knee a little bit. So you sort of want to just do it the same way as you would with your markers. You're colouring essentially the same way, but now you're giving it some extra definition. And you do not have to do this. I'm just showing you in case you want to. Okay, let's do a little bit at the top here. Okay, now, just like with my markers, I smooth it out. So I've got like a peach, a skin type colour. I'm going to come in. And these are sort of the colours that I've found that work with the different shades of skin that I like to use. And I'm really just doing exactly the same as we do with markers. I'm softening those pencil lines by going over the top. And you do need to be careful. It's best not to go over pencil with your markers again. So this is definitely the last step because you can destroy your nibs. So just be careful with that. And then I'm going to come in with a lighter peach. So this is a light peach. A lighter peach, it is a light peach. And just maybe soften some of this as well. I'm not using a blender stump or anything like that. I'm just using the pencil, and because I'm keeping my strokes in the same direction as the shape of the object that I'm colouring, I don't have any sort of like streaky problems, you know. And I'm pressing lightly. Doesn't that look good? There we go. I think she looks pretty hot. She is definitely ready for the beach in her sexy bikini. Awesome. So happy that you joined me, and I really am grateful that you have purchased my ebook and helped support me. And I hope that you have found some good tips to help you move forward with colouring your knees and your collarbones and toning the body on your characters. And of course, I would love you to share your results in the Make It Crafty Facebook group. And if you have any questions, you can always contact me. Ideally, I love it when you have questions and you contact me in the Facebook group, because it means that I can help you and answer you in the group, and it helps other people as well. So if you have questions, if you want feedback, if you want support, please do go. You can absolutely contact me privately. I'm always happy to help, but otherwise contact in the Facebook group so that you could possibly be helping someone else too. So thank you so much again, and I can't wait to see how you go and share your images and share your results. Bye for now, and I will see you again soon.